exists. So with that, I'm sure our others will scurry back here in a second. We've got it. We got the decision makers here. The deciders are at the table. Let's decide something.
Okay. Lunch next week is the pie company again.
Oh yeah. Oh, there's a murderer's row of assistant superintendents and deputy superintendents.
At Chrysler Center before the game is teacher appreciation night. Apparently, it was mainly available.
All right, we're going to start with public participation. We have a few folks good enough to join us, so let's, Lupe, get our colleagues back here so we're paying attention to
Good luck.
our public. In a moment, Marilyn's going to call up the folks and read the rules, such as they are.
But I wanted you to be aware.
I'll just say them off the top of my head.
I have to talk to someone to take it out.
Bet you know him. Bet you know him. He usually sits on the opposing bench side with security on that.
If there's any more people that haven't turned in a card, please turn in a card.
Do you have any?
I think I have all the public participation forms. Let me know if I'm wrong about that.
Because the odds are reasonable.
All right, let's go.
Thanks. I'm nodding.
While we're waiting, Lupe, do you want to introduce your mentee who's joined us today?
Absolutely.
She's right behind you.
Yes. I would like you to meet Esther Torres. Stand up, Esther, please. And Esther has been in our country for 3.5 years, and she's very proud today because she has her appointment for application for her residency. So that's a great accomplishment.
Welcome. Note the State Board of Education welcomes immigrants always. Thank you. Make us richer. All right.
Ready? Okay, so I have two forms. The first one is from Michael Massari and Phil Jankowski. Did the two of you want to come to the table together, which is perfectly fine? Okay, and then Michael Libby will follow them. You can just push that computer, shove it out of your way. And I will, and you can, if you want to just give the handouts to Rick there, he's happy to take one and pass it along. And I just want to remind people who are giving public comment that you'll have 5 minutes. You'll be able to monitor it here on the timer. And the board does not typically engage in conversation, but they're happy to hear whatever you have to say. May contact you later about your comments.
All right.
Okay, so we'll be ready whenever you are.
Okay, we're ready. Okay, again, I'm Mike Muzzary, superintendent from Armada Area Schools in North Macomb County, and this is Phil Jankowski, our assistant superintendent. I've been in the district 20 years. This is my 4th year as superintendent, and Phil's been in the district 8 years, 2 as assistant superintendent and 6 as high school principal. This is a very timely presentation that we have for you to follow up on your post-secondary conversation you just had. District administration just awarded our school district an award, and they award 36 school districts in the United States annually. This is called #Accepted, and it's about our college readiness program. In 2009, only 44% of our students went on to college. Currently, 96%, and Mr. Jankowski is going to show how we got there.
Yeah, this is part of the Network of Michigan Educators Sharing Success, and we wanted to kind of talk about it, especially since we saw it was a topic of conversation today. One of the challenges that we had in Armada, because we're a rural district in northern Macomb and partly into St. Clair County, only 15% of our parents had college degrees. A lot of agriculture, a lot of home businesses, and that was one of the challenges we had. So what we looked at, we started collecting data, and we looked at our students, and we saw that not many would go on to college directly out of high school. They'd wait a year, and then life would get in the way. We also looked at our ACT scores. We were behind the state average at 18.7 at that point in time. And so what we wanted to do was try and create something that was engaging, that fit for the culture of our community, to kind of build that. And what you can see here is we wanted to celebrate kids who were going to college. Most of our parents indicated they wanted their students to be college ready. We changed our structure of our day so that students didn't have to choose college ready or career ready. all of our students have to take 2 years of a CTE program and do college readiness as well. And that's gone off very well. We've expanded our CTE offerings to renewable energy, to a nursing program that we offer. And our goal was students to get either come out with college credits, an internship, and a business industry recognized certification. You can see on the back of the handout, we created partnerships with Macomb Community College. That's our CNA program is with them. Ferris State, Lawrence Tech to offer dual enrollment and concurrent enrollment. We added quite a few advanced placement classes. We had 2. We added 9 more for 11. We're one of the few in the state that now offers the AP Research continuum. We invited on one of the problems being a rural district. Kids did not have experiences at the college. We brought on-site admission. So we brought colleges in so they could meet with them. And we do tours on weekends for some students. In fact, this past weekend, took a group of middle schoolers to Michigan State so they could have an experience. So it starts to bridge that gap because many of them, their parents didn't go to college. So our results were very excellent, 96% so far of our students. We have quite a few that actually go beyond Michigan now, and they go to Virginia Tech, Kentucky, Alabama have been some of the popular out-of-state ones, where before hardly anybody would leave the state. They're now just looking at all these opportunities. We increased our graduation rate to 98.1%. We reduced our dropout rate to less than 1%. Increased our ACT score over the last 5 years from 18.7 to 20.5, so almost a 2-point gain. And a lot of that was just by celebrating. When students receive their college acceptance letter, you can see it on the picture we posted in the hallway so that they can see it. We put it on social media. We do signing ceremonies for students so their parents can come in. We make a big deal about it. And as they see that, everybody wants to be a part of that. And it's been a great way to kind of celebrate it in our community and push kids to get higher education.
That's fantastic. I'll break our rules for a minute.
Yeah,
and just say-
there's 2 of you, so were you
Yeah,
done?
you can have another 5 minutes.
I can reset.
No, it's fantastic, and it just shows what's possible to do when you organize around it. And I'll tell Cassandra, because I know she's from Yale, Michigan, and has a deep appreciation for the kind of small-town communities, and she's the first in her family to go to college, and now she's PhD, Dr. Ulbrich, and it's amazing that you guys are, and gals, I'm sure, are creating this kind of opportunity building, and it just shows it's not just kids, minorities in urban districts, it's white rural kids that need kind of wraparound, and it can work. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Were you finished? Or you?
Yep.
Okay.
40% to 90%
Very efficient.
is phenomenal.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
for sharing.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much.
Okay, and Michael Libby's next.
My name is Michael Libby, 1191 River Oak Drive, Mount Pleasant, Michigan. As you know, I've been participating in the standards process, including being on the review committees. In that role, my job is to listen, to find the valid input that are in most statements, to occasionally clarify, but never to make my own input. Today, I would like to make my own input as an individual to the standards process. My name is Michael Libby. I'm a citizen in a democracy using the first definition in most dictionaries, a government that derives its authority from the consent of the governed, either directly or through representatives. I recognize that, like many concepts, democracy has multiple definitions, including majority rules, which also applies in our government, for example, with ballot initiatives. I'm a citizen in a specific kind of democracy. A constitutional republic is one legitimate and important way to describe our form of democracy as different from other democracies, such as a parliamentary system. I am a citizen in a democracy. I believe, as Ronald Reagan said, the essential difference in our government is contained in the first 3 words of the Constitution: we, the people. Not we, the lords, as is in historic England. Not we, the dynasty, as in China. Not we, the party, as in USSR. And not we, the representatives, today. In a democracy, our government and constitution evolve. We, the people, is no longer limited to white males. I'm a citizen in a democracy and have individual rights and responsibilities separate from and transcending the decisions of my elected representatives. My wife and I both came of age in the Vietnam War era. She exercised her right of free speech and her responsibility to be actively involved as a citizen by peacefully protesting the war. I believe, despite my concerns about the war, that I needed to meet my responsibilities as a citizen by dropping out of graduate school and voluntarily enlisting in the Army, in which I served, I might add, entirely on the East Coast of the United States, without need of much courage and without gaining much distinction. I am a citizen in a democracy, and I believe that I need to be informed about our government, including reading the Citizen's Guide to State Government, 98th Legislature, 2015-2016, which begins, Chapter 1, Citizen Participation. An informed and active citizenry is the lifeblood of a democracy. First sentence, it is important in a democracy that citizens keep their legislators informed. I am a citizen in a democracy, and I value differences of opinion and debate about our government. I want our schools to foster debate about the differences between a founding father's interpretation of the Constitution and a living document's interpretation. I disagree with people who want to try to codify one perspective or another in social studies standards. I am a citizen in the world's longest functioning democracy and proud of it. I believe our government is of the people, by the people, and for the people. I appreciate the input of people who want to push the standards committees to be precise and balanced in the use of language. But I cannot agree with those who want to eliminate the term democracy from our schools. The phrase constitutional republic is an accurate and appropriate way to refer to the structure of our government. We need to teach about the Constitution and representative government, including limits on government, the Bill of Rights, and the separation of powers. But we are, more importantly, a democracy, and also need to be teaching about democratic values, the rule of law, civil discourse, and the rights and responsibilities of a citizenship. My name is Michael Libby. I think we should be teaching students they are citizens in a democracy, and I hope you think so too.
I do. I do too. Thank you.
Are there any more people with public participation forms? Thank you to our speakers.
Thank you. We've got some introductions of some new MD employees, and Kyle, I think you have a couple to make.
I do. Thank you, John.
Yeah.
I'd like to, it's my pleasure to introduce on the board Eris Bailey, with a student from the Library of Michigan. If you could just stand and tell us a little what you do at the library.
Sure. Hi, I'm Eris Bailey. I work for the Statewide Library Services. I took this position to further my education as a future librarian. Previously, I worked for, I would say, a homeless shelter, serving people homeless. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you.
Also, with the Library of Michigan is Caitlin Silvestri.
Hi, my name is Caitlin Silvestri, and I am a student assistant with the Law Library of Michigan. And at my position there, I compile legislative histories upon request, and I maintain the upkeep of the law library. I'm a graduating senior at Michigan State University, and I hope to go to law school for the next couple of years.
Welcome. Great. Yeah, Norma Jean.
I'm happy to introduce Lori McCann, who's with the Office of Special Education as financial analyst.
And I have 25 years experience in schools, which I guess is a unique situation in our department especially. And they're all thrilled to have my experience, and I think our local districts are too, because I've been telling them what's wrong with their reports and telling them how to correct them right on. So we're weeks ahead of schedule with what they're telling me, so it's been lots of fun.
Thanks. That Susan, you had some.
Yep. Allison Bliss is a new employee in the Central Reconciliation Unit.
So my name's Allison Bliss, so I work with the Central Reconciliation Unit. I handle inquiries from the DHS clients and daycare centers regarding the state child daycare program. And prior to working here, I was working with the Peace Corps in Sub-Saharan Africa, promoting food security and health education in rural African villages.
Well, thank you. Is that all? Thank you very much. Welcome to Department of Education. Nice to meet you. Great. All right, I think we're going back to our agenda of that we skipped. We've got a good news story, right? Recognition of National PTA Family Reading Challenge winner Julia Spence. from Livonia. So, and I think Norma Jean and others are coming to help with this celebration recognition. And Sandra York is joining us too, Executive Director of Michigan PTA. And Julie Spence is the PTA President from Garfield Elementary. Thank you and congratulations.
Well, good afternoon, and how nice to begin our first presentation with another celebration. And Sandra York is here to help with that, and you probably know Sandra because we're always so grateful. She's to all of our board meetings. She's on many of our committees. She's worked with the 10 and 10. So she's a familiar face and a great voice to have in the room. And she is going to present with to Julie Spence, who won the National PTA Family Reading Challenge, and reading is near and dear to my heart. So congratulations, and take it away.
This is really exciting for me because I'm with you there. If I don't have at least 6, 8, 10 books that I'm reading, there's something wrong in my life. There's some that sit in my car and sometimes take me, a few pages here with a cup of coffee or whatever, and take years to read some that I zip through in a heartbeat. So for me, as a child, reading was my salvation. In a time when I was, although some of you may find it hard to be very introverted and didn't talk to people very much. So anyway, PTA's Family Reading Challenge was designed as a campaign to encourage families to keep learning alive during the summer months and to just create great memories and opportunities for sharing by reading books together as a family. And many people have seen the data and the research. Studies show that reading daily during the summer break is one of the most important activities to prevent learning loss. Also, it's demonstrated that when families read together, children do better in school and beyond. So, we can hear all kinds of things, but the reality takes place in what really happens. PTA's Family Reading Challenge isn't just this one contest that happened. It is an ongoing program that they have right down at the bottom of this. There is then actually linked to National PTA site, and there's all kinds of ideas and opportunities for families and local parent groups to conduct activities that embrace reading. The idea is really to focus on improving those reading skills in the early years so that it carries on through life, just like it did with many of us. In your folder, I actually have a printout of the results of the reading challenge, and I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on all the details, but I do want to mention a few things. One is that we had over 1,500, or National PTA had over 1,500 participants throughout the United States and in the territories that have PTA units. And if you look at the number of accounts reached, 1.2 million accounts reached, the activity is broken down by blogs and visits to the national site, Facebook, all kinds of things. And it's really amazing for this one contest that really took place in July of this last year, that amount of activity happened. And in a minute, I'm going to let Julie tell you a little bit more about how it all happened. However, I do want to say that, Julie is the grand prize winner nationally. She is from Garfield Elementary PTA, is the president there, and she is now National PTA's ambassador. She'll be, she and her family will be going to the 2016 National Convention. I'm going to let her tell you a little bit more about what her family won, and just to mention that in partnership with Kindle, Kindles were given to 50 schools in addition to what happened with the grand prize winner Julie told me she likes to hold a book in her hand like I do, but we know the new way of reading is totally, the smell of a book. You know, I have a room full of books at home, and that's when I sit there, it's a feel-good thing. But I also know with the new generation, it isn't. It's about it being on screen. It's a whole different world, and I think that being able to embrace those two modes are pretty amazing. So what I did want to do is share just a little bit about some of the tweets that Julie put out, and we're going to go through them pretty quickly here. So in the pictures, I apologize, the quality may not be as good as they would have been on screen, but I think those images are just beautiful. Oops, what did we do there? Did I get rid of that? It's never too early. I mean, of course it's never too early to read. So, you know, don't all of us want our children to be spending their evenings like this instead of perhaps in front of, okay, I'm only partially anti-television. I threw mine out. So, all right. And when you have a group reading together, it just reinforces a different level of what's going on, a little bit of bedtime reading. This is pretty good. You read. Yeah. And my favorite is if you can get your dog to read with you, you have really, really moved along. And if you want to go back to any of these pictures, it will be easy enough. But I want Julie to be able to talk a little bit about
Doesn't comprehend very well.
the process for her, and I'll keep the dog up.
You know, it's so weird. I keep looking at how many people actually participated in the fact that my family won. I just think it's mind-blowing to me. I can't believe 1,500 people on my family won. Like, it's just amazing. But it is. It's really neat to see it on paper. You know, I just took it was an email, and I thought, oh, a PTA meeting. Okay, I'm going to read it, and I read it, and it's a challenge, and I thought, well, I'm just going to represent PTA just in general, put it on my Facebook page. I said, hey, families, you know, try this during the summer, get your kids to read. I know a lot of families are always struggling. How do I get my kids to read? You know, how is it? You know, we start off as simple as my girls read me recipes. You know, they don't know what they're reading, but they're reading me recipes on what I'm supposed to, okay, what's my next step? You know, and they'll read to me, you know, out of a cookbook. You know, it's just something, you know, it starts as something simple as that. Or my grocery list. You know, I have her read it to me when I'm, you know, going through the store, you know, read everything I need, you know, and she'll go through. So, you know, it's something simple as that to get them, you know, to really like reading. My youngest daughter in this picture, she actually went through a summer reading program that she absolutely loved. She missed half her summer, but she didn't care. She absolutely loved it. They were from the Madonna University. Some of the students came in, so that was really fun. But honestly, I do not have a Twitter account until this contest. I didn't know how to Twitter. It sounds so, but they said, you know, go on Facebook, go on Twitter. I'm like, okay, here I go. So, and I remember taking that first picture and going, #FamiliesRead, Twitter, I don't know, you know, I had a little bird and I sent it out and I thought, okay, let's see what's happened. And to be honest, there was 3 challenges they gave you. The first challenge, you just take pictures of them reading. Second challenge, and it's like I got the email, the first email, you are the challenge #1 winner, you know, along with other people. And I'm like, wow, $50 to Amazon. Who doesn't love Amazon? And then the next one was the e-reader, which my oldest daughter was very excited about. You know, mom, you know, I want to win this e-reader. So we did that, and we actually won the second one as well. So when it came down to the grand prize, you know, my girls are like, we're never going to win. I'm like, it's okay. It was fun. We got an e-reader. We get the $50. And I was actually at a pool laying out, and I got the phone call from Mary Pat King, and she said, you're my grand prize winner. And I said, I remember I just started crying. And my friend was next to me, and she's like, what happened? What happened? And I'm like, hold on a second. So that's when, and we actually didn't get to tell them till, I think it was like August, end of August or something like that, because I had to do, of course, I made a book. That I said, here's our final challenge. And they're like, man, because they were like, we didn't win. Why do we have to do another one? You know, like they were kind of bummed. Because I don't know if you heard, I'll tell you what we won, and it's pretty exciting. I said, this is the final challenge. I have to make this book, and I have to read it to you. And they're like, okay, Mom. And I said, but we have to videotape us doing this. And I read it to them, and I said, this is what we did this summer, you know, we did this family challenge together, this is what we won, and I said, at the end I said, and the grand prize winner is, and I turned the page and it says the Spence family, and they were like they were just so like, what? And this is what we won. We won 2 Kindle Paperwhites, a $250 Kindle gift card, Kindle Unlimited for 1 year, which is amazing because all those books we can put on their Kindles now. Then we are the national promotion as PTA Family Reading Ambassadors. This is the next thing that I really enjoyed was the PTA One Voice blog. I get to do 4 of the One Voice blogs, which was really fun. I've only done 1 so far, but it's been fun. And then we got a flight for our whole family to Orlando and a hotel at the hotel at the Swan and Dolphin Resort on the Disney property from Thursday, June 30th to Sunday, July 3rd. And then we get tickets to go to Disney World or whatever. It's one of them. We get to pick up. So it was amazing. Yeah, I still can't. I guess it still hasn't sunk in, you know, till next June. And we're off.
And that is at the National PTA Convention. So
Yes, it's a national, yes. So that Tuesday we're there, we get to go to the convention and just hang out with everybody, and I'm very excited.
And Nikki.
Yeah, well, Nikki, yeah. All my girls are excited about that, but I'm just excited to go to the convention and just, I can't wait.
That's fantastic. Well, Julie, we're very proud, and we're not surprised that the family reading booster is from Michigan, and congratulations. Plus, you'll never have to like recall any of those tweets. I mean, you're never going to embarrass anybody by this wonderful promotion of reading. You also reminded me, I mean, all the books and actually all the information in the world is being put online by University of Michigan and a led consortium of universities with Google, so you can download everything in that 1 year you've got the Kindle. You can just get all the books in the world, thanks to another Michigan leadership.
Yeah, my daughter has a list.
Any board members have any questions or comments or
Congratulations.
kudos?
Congratulations. And thank you so much for taking the time to acknowledge this, because it really is a great
I'm with PTA.
Is it so rare? Is that what you're trying to say?
Take a measure.
Terrific, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Well, going back to our agenda, I did my report, though. I failed to mention one small note. Michelle Fecto, you were awarded the Outstanding Government Official Award from the Michigan Association of Media and Education.
Yes.
Thank you. Congratulations. Thank you. And another making us proud. There will be no superintendent report. The top 10 progress, I think, is the report. So thanks for that. Rick Joseph, our great teacher of the year, is got his sharing with us.
I wanted to begin my report by thanking Superintendent Whiston for agreeing to come to a very important conference yesterday. He wasn't able to attend, of course, but John Austin represented him brilliantly yesterday just across town at the Kellogg Center. The conference was called ESET 2, which stands for Elevating and Celebrating Effective Teaching and Teachers in Michigan. And every December, the Network of Michigan Educators, of which I am a member, of which Phil Jankowski is a member, the gentleman who just presented to us about the work that they're doing in Armada schools. We have our annual conference, and this year it was held under the auspices of the ESET 2 Michigan Conference, and it brought together almost 200 educators from around the state who are teacher leaders, and so we were able to celebrate teacher leaders and teacher leadership, and it was absolutely brilliant. John offered some very powerful remarks, and he echoed the continuing support that all of you as board members have always offered us as classroom teachers, as teacher leaders throughout the state of Michigan. This past month, I've been able to get out more into schools across the state. I was able to visit East Kentwood High School and started in the classroom of Luke Wilson. You may remember Luke, who was a finalist for the Michigan Teacher of the Year Award, and Luke is a statistics teacher. I have to say that slowly. And what's remarkable about Luke is the extent to which he infuses narratives and really uses stories and storytelling to help make statistics very relevant in the lives of his students. And he helps them understand why numbers matter and why data matters in a very real way. It was extraordinarily powerful. Next door to Luke is a brilliant teacher. He and his partner teach AP Biology at East Kentwood High School, and what's remarkable, we hear often Pam Pugh, our colleague, talks consistently about the importance of representing the voices of African American males, and what this teacher has done is he prides himself on steering youth that are underrepresented, particularly African American males and other children of color, to specifically AP Biology. And what he does, he and his colleague do, is they manage to make this course as hands-on as possible. Now, this is an approach that would work for any student, but it's extremely important for students who are disinclined to traditional text-based forms of learning. So in their classroom, they have a parakeet on a perch that's right in the corner of their classroom. They have salmon roe in a tank in the other corner of the classroom. They have bearded dragons and snakes and lizards that they breed in the classroom. And the students do all of this captive breeding themselves. And I turned to him and I said, I wish I had this biology class when I was in high school. I might be a biologist today, who knows? But you can see that the girls on the right-hand side of that slide, they're looking at fish, they're looking at fruit flies and the behavior of fruit flies in their biology class, and it was exceptionally engaging. It's the kind of teaching and learning that really ought to exist everywhere, but is particularly important for people in communities of color. I also had one of the most exciting moments of my visit was when I got to spend some time in an English language learners math class, because East Kentwood High School is home to students from over 50 different countries, and John Austin talked about welcoming immigrants to our board meeting this morning, and Lupe's protege, bienvenida aquí a nuestra reunión. Estamos muy orgullosos de que esté aquí con nosotros. The reality is I was able to not only practice my Spanish in this ELL classroom, but I met kids from Thailand, Palestine, Nepal, some of the most far-flung places from this suburb of Grand Rapids. I was absolutely astounded. That woman, the young woman on the left, is from Albania. The gentleman to my left is my right, your left, is from Colombia. And these students, some of them are refugees. A number of them, there were two kids from Burma, Myanmar, who had spent most of their lives in refugee camps, and now they've found a home in East Kentwood. And so what they do is they come to East Kentwood and they get placed in, they take an online assessment test, and then they're able to move at their own pace in order to progress through the math curriculum, and it was absolutely brilliant. Next, I was able to visit an extremely dynamic teacher at East Kentwood who is the choir teacher. She does a number of different sections of voice, and so I was able to listen to the Varsity Voices, the name of their senior choir performance, and that was very uplifting and meaningful. I think I started in reverse order. That's okay. So that's Terry Blackhawk. Terry Blackhawk is founded the Inside Out Literary Arts Project, which worked for 25 years in schools in Detroit, teaching kids the value of poetry. Many of you may be familiar with her work. And at the National Council of Teachers of English Conference in Minneapolis, I met her and was able to celebrate her work. She recently retired from the Inside Out Literary Arts Project, but she spent her entire career uplifting the voices of students of color, particularly African Americans, and celebrating their stories, celebrating their lives, and honoring the contributions that African Americans have historically made to our country that, as many of us know, have historically been very underrepresented. I was able to visit Gary Abood in his chemistry lab at Grosse Pointe North High School. Speaking of African Americans, Grosse Pointe North High School has a population of African Americans that is about 35% of the overall student population, and that has changed over the course of the last 10 years. So as a product of suburban Detroit, I have a stereotype of communities like Grosse Pointe as being a relatively lily-white enclave, but the reality is that more and more people of color are moving into inner ring suburbs around the city of Detroit, and that's a manifestation of the population shift that's occurred within the city. And now that Detroit is about 680,000, made up of about 680,000 residents, there are significant communities of color, and it's important as educators that we're sensitive. Gary does a fine job of including culturally sensitive practices in his chemistry lab and with all the students in his care. These students are engaged in what's called a brain break, which is basically an opportunity for kids to stand up in the middle of a lesson and do some activities that stimulate their brains in other ways so that they can redirect their energies and more completely focus on the task at hand. This was an absolutely remarkable experience. Linda Forward offered a keynote at this MDE conference, the School Improvement Conference in Lansing, and these folks represent the first generation film. There are 4 students from California who were the first of their families to go to college, and they're all people. There was a woman from rural California who is white, a young man who's from Los Angeles who's African American, a woman from Bakersfield, young woman who's Latina, and then another a young man who is from it's a Pacific island, Polynesian island, and it profiles the challenges that they face. Well, 2 of the 4 of them, plus the filmmaker, were in attendance at this conference. There were about 500 people, and they were able to offer this keynote experience. We watched a clip from the film, and then we had a discussion about the challenges that first-generation students face. There were 2 students in the middle there, those 2 young women who are from Michigan State University, who were not in the film itself, but they themselves, of course, are first-generation students. And so having them to provide a local reference, as well as this young man on the left is from Los Angeles, the young woman on the right is from Bakersfield, was magnificent. I was able to go to the Van Elsander Neuroscience Center at Providence Park Hospital with Emily Polonsky. You know the work of Emily. She spoke so eloquently last month in regard to the science standards that we adopted. Well, she has a group of students who go once a week to Providence Park Hospital, and on this day, they were able to visit this lab where surgeons from all over the world come and train. It's a cadaver lab, and they actually showed us where the cadavers were kept. They did not introduce us to any cadavers, however. But the students were able to use these high-powered microscopes, and they were able to practice with things like insects and grapes and other dog bones and other objects of that nature in order to get an idea of what the work of a researcher is, and more specifically a practicing surgeon, and the extent to which they have to practice before they get into a real live operating room. And so this hands-on approach to teaching and learning is, of course, extraordinarily engaging and very motivating, is just one example of the kind of best practice education that I'm seeing in my travels around the state. There's Emily right there. You'll recognize her on the right, along with some representatives from Providence Park Hospital who have made this collaboration possible. I was also able to get into Avondale. Auburn Elementary School is a school that has a significant number of children who are receive free and reduced lunch services. I read to them from the official book of the Michigan Teacher of the Year, The Junkyard Wonders by Patricia Polacco, and it was extraordinarily well received. So well received, in fact, that I was there at that very same school the next day for a conference on job-embedded professional learning, and I wandered down to this classroom of students, and they all were in the midst of their independent reading time, and they recognized me, and so they ran to the door and they said, Mr. Joe, you're back. And they held up the books that they were reading, and they said, have you read this book, Mr. Joe? Have you read this book, Mr. Joe? Have you read that book, Mr. Joe? And so they were just simply elated, not so much that I was there, but to show me what they were reading. And so to very much echo what we just heard from our contest winner from the PTA Reading Challenge, reading aloud is an extraordinarily powerful modality and an extraordinarily powerful pedagogical tool to reach people, to help them see themselves in stories. And for these kids to be so excited about the books that they were reading and their desire to share them with me was just one indication of the power of connectedness that happens when we share stories, whether they're own personal stories that we tell or whether they're enshrined in books. This is Julie Marchand Waite, who's an art teacher at Avondale Middle School, who is just posing with some of the work that her students we're doing, and she was talking about the challenges that she faces to make sure that her students, particularly her students from diverse cultural backgrounds, are fully engaged in an art curriculum that sometimes favors a Western Eurocentric vision of what art is. And so she's able to try and help them see art in a more complete way. Finally, I was able to attend the Advanced Ed conference, which was fascinating. The first thing we did when they walked into this session was make a paper hat and put it on. And then you'll see on the right-hand side there are two brilliant professors from Eastern Michigan University who talked about the use of puppets and the use of realia in classrooms as a way to engage students. And again, talked about the use of brain breaks, which Gary Abood uses. But the whole point is that most of us are not able to concentrate for 40 to 50 minutes at a stretch. No one can. No human being can. We can kid ourselves and say that we can, but nobody can. And so they did things like use like a pointer, a traditional pointer, instead of it being a laser pointer or an old wooden ruler or a yardstick, they would use like a severed hand or a severed leg that you would buy at the Halloween store, because everybody's going to look at that. They're going to pay attention to that. They talked about, again, using puppets or using toys or different techniques as transitional objects in the course of instruction, simply to get the kids to look at you, to focus on you. And now in 2015, we're in an era of eminent distractibility. We are more distracted now than we've ever been. And so the more teachers can facilitate engagement in their kids through simply getting their attention, the better. And so these teachers were brilliant at articulating that and sharing it with all of us as participants. Finally, I did a presentation speaking of engagement on the distractibility that students who have attention deficit disorder or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder face. And so I led a professional learning experience with teachers at the Advanced Ed conference, and we reviewed strategies and shared different experiences that we've had as educators in order to fully engage and motivate our students in the most meaningful ways possible. So as your Michigan Teacher of the Year, I continue to be extraordinarily stimulated and fortunate to celebrate the work of teachers throughout the state, and it's my honor to share this information with you, and I look forward to continuing experiences as the weeks progress. Thank you.
Thank you.
I guess we could, as a board, take more brain breaks or use them ourselves, but that presupposes we're using our brains while we're allegedly working here. So, but no, Rick, I really appreciate, and you're helping other educators, yourself. You're not just celebrating, and that's much appreciated. But thank you for your comments too. I want to let Eileen comment, but I really appreciate the discussion of it, focus on celebrating and welcoming growing diversity in all forms to make our state more rich and interesting and a more dynamic place. I mean, as you know, immigrants are us in America and Michigan. It's, Macomb County's growing because of growing immigrant populations. Look at the Latino community, Mexican in Detroit, in terms of helping that community repopulate and revive whole neighborhoods. Look at Grand Rapids, it's the same story. And when some are playing on fears to say close the borders and let's not live up to our values as Americans, we have to reinforce, no, this is what makes us who we are, and it makes us a richer, more economically vital, more populous state and place if we keep animating. Our job is to help all get a great education, and everyone wants to get a great education so they can participate. And people that come here want to be free, and they want to live in America, and that's why they're here, and we should help them. So it's wonderful to shine a light on that, and thank you so much. Eileen.
I just wanted to say that the Teachers of the Year do us an unbelievable service, because none of us can get around to schools the way that they can, and they're always articulate and animated. But Rick, you have a particular gift for finding the niche that each of those classes occupies on a given day, and you bring them alive to us in a way that I just adore. So thank you very much.
That's why it was fun last night, because there are hundreds of excellent educators there, including like Teachers of the Year, past, present, and future. There were a wonderful line of a lot of our old friends who've helped us a lot here reflect and make good decisions. So thanks again. All right, our next item is we're going to a discussion and action items. We want to approve the goals that we discussed this morning. I guess I would propose and I would like to make a motion that we approve the goals, knowing that they will be and are being modified in their language, consistent with the direction and comments of the board as we heard this morning. And so I think I would welcome support for that motion. And, yes.
Second.
Second. Any other discussion on approval of our top 10 goals as presented and modified based on our discussion?
Does it include the things we talked about?
Exactly,
this morning,
yes.
the changes and additions and so
I
on?
was just talking with
In that
our
case,
staff
yes.
to ensure that that was well done and consistently done, and I'm sure it will be.
Mm-hmm.
Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. All right. We have changes to the organization of representatives on the SEAC. This SEAC, the Special Education Advisory Committee that advises the board, has some nominations to fill vacancies. Board approval is asked for. Norma Jean, did we need to present this, and Terry Chapman? I don't know if Terry is joining you or not.
Terry's unable to be here
Okay.
for a moment, so I think that I can address this. Basically, once again, the positions are all due to a resignation or a delegate situation. So people have resigned, and we need to have new people in, or the delegate has moved up, which we talked about the last time with SEAC, and now a delegate needs to be put in that position. So it's the Michigan Association of Secondary School Principals. They're requesting that Andy Kowalski fill a vacancy for a resignation. The Michigan Association of Intermediate School Administrators,
That's Terry,
Administrators
behind you.
has requested that Ms. Ronna Steele be approved for the vacancy created by the resignation of the delegate. Then we have the Council of Exceptional Children, and they're requesting Mary Meldrum, and I hope I'm saying these names right, be approved as their organization's alternate, and they didn't have an alternate position before, but need to have that position. And then Ms. Amy Schelling has been nominated by the Educator Preparation Institutions, formerly Institutions of Higher Education, to be an ex officio representative on SEAC. So I believe those are the positions that we'd like approved.
Go ahead.
So is the ratio of parent and of persons with disabilities?
We actually only need 16 to meet our 51% requirement, and we have 19.
Okay.
So we're ahead of the game.
Okay.
Parent-friendly, parent-heavy,
Yes.
I would think. Any
So
other-
moved.
So moved. Support the recommendations for SEAC appointments. Is there a second?
Support.
Sandra supported. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. The motion is approved.
Thank you.
All right. We have our state and federal legislative and potpourri discussion here of current events and current education topics. So Marty, thank you for giving an update, and I know Cassandra will share any legislative items of the moment that we need to discuss. And other
Sure.
board members have, at this point, this is a good time to catch up a few topics that board members wanted to make sure we discussed today. So thanks, Marty.
Sure. The State Board Legislative Committee met a week ago yesterday, and there were a couple bills discussed. Senate Bill 279 and 280, which deal with organized labor. Although they are not per se education bills, we gave an update as to what they do. They were both passed by the Senate. They are now sitting in House committees since November 10th, so it's been a month. I don't think they'll be acted on yet this calendar year, but it's something to keep an eye on. So I'm not sure if, Cassandra, you wanted to address the issues, or?
No, I think that's a perfect wrap-up. It was just something that someone had contacted me about keeping an eye on these bills, and so we just wanted to get an update on where they were.
Okay. And also was discussed, and I may defer to Kathleen with her role with NASB as to the reauthorization of No Child Left Behind, which is now called the Every Student Succeeds Act, which is,
Well, as you all know by now, the House passed it overwhelmingly bipartisanly, and it's now in the Senate, and they might be voting today for that matter, or maybe tomorrow. And they expect that to pass in the Senate, and they expect the president to sign it. So it keeps the annual testing, that's still there, as it has been. But states are freer to design their own tests. So we're back to everybody doing their own thing. And it gives a lot more power back to the states, and takes away, restricts the actions that the Secretary of Education can take. So the states as a whole sort of consider this a victory. But there are people who find the bill is 150 some odd pages. I didn't print it out.
Oh, I wanted a copy.
I've been sending you the stuff I got, but I decided nobody would want to do that anyway. But I hope somebody is doing it.
yeah, in the weekly board briefs that Brian sent to the board last Friday, there were attachments to that had analyses, not only by CCSSO, but other agencies, to kind of explain the differences between current law and what the new law would be.
I expect to get stuff from NASB, but they're busy at the Capitol doing their lobbying, so when I get it, I'll forward it to everybody. But at any rate, there are people who are saying that there are things in there that are very problematic, but on the whole, it's an improvement. It's a improvement over NCLB.
When is it likely to be taken up by the Senate and/or made law?
Right.
Do we know?
So it's in the Senate, and I assume we've got Democratic support in the House, Republican support in the House, and get to do it again in the Senate. So.
Yeah, they expect a vote either today or tomorrow in the Senate.
Really? Yeah. They might be voting as we speak.
Yeah, she has it.
Tomorrow at 10:45.
Thank you.
She's a good partner.
Yeah. I know, I don't think we haven't taken a real strong position on this or guidance to our delegation, right? Have we?
I've talked to some of our
I would just note, it's a real double-edged sword, meaning while there may be lots of happiness over escape from what appeared to be sort of untenable and rigid NCLB requirements, going back to anything goes education by states means states like us.
For me, it's a little frightening.
Right. We have set high standards and have an assessment of those standards because we think it's the right thing to do for learning. And as those results, other states that water things down, it will be all too easy for those who want to say, look, Michigan's not doing very well and we're doing great, when just the opposite is true. Right. We're actually trying to educate our kids and they're like walking away from it. So.
Yeah, I'll never forget when I was president of the board, I got a call from a reporter here in Lansing and wanted to know what I thought that Michigan had so many failing schools. And then he said, well, I have to tell you, Kathy, Arkansas didn't have any. So I said, well, that's your answer. We have high standards and they don't have high standards.
So the question becomes, what happens with all these NCLB waivers at this point?
When the bill, or if and when the bill is signed by the president, then I believe there's some time lag when all the waivers, when the new implementation of the new law will happen. So I think that all the waivers are then put to the side.
Okay.
Yes.
They expire in August of 2016, and then the new system doesn't have to start until 17-18, so there's transition time.
Michelle?
I don't know if the department it has or will be doing a look at exactly what will be changed because of the waivers going away.
Norma Jean is nodding up and down right behind
I
you.
know
You can't see that.
Our state has, because of Race to the Top and other things, have made them part of our law, I think, unfortunately. But I don't know if there's any impetus, like, there's more and more discussion about tying teachers' evaluations to standardized tests as being an invalid measure, and even yet another organization, national organization, has weighed in on that. If that would be something that should be revisited, although they just passed the law, but given the sort of this recognition on a national level of, sort of a repudiation of that, if maybe we should reconsider at least at some point. So anyway, I'm glad to hear that there's going to be some look at what we have, what's going to change, and then the discussion would be what else should we look to change given the changes at the federal level, so.
Can I ask a couple other issues people wanted to talk about?
One other communication I got from somebody, I'm not sure who, that there's the provisions for teacher preparation give emphasis to non-traditional teacher preparation institutions.
Yes.
And the alternative kinds of preparation of teachers. And there's some concern about that from quite a few people evidently, but that's apparently in there, and the whole thing is going to pass. The conference report was approved 39-1 in the committee, and it's not subject to amendments once it gets to the floor, so it's either up or down. So it's going to be up, but so there are some things that we like and some things that we don't like.
I was also, if I could, I'm
Go
sorry,
ahead.
just jumping in. I was asked a specific question about opting out, and I don't know if that's something, because as of now, my understanding is if parents opt their students out of the testing, it goes below the 95% percentile, that currently that's used against the school and could consider that, the school would be considered in failure. So under the new rules, from what I understand, there's some changes with that, but I just don't understand exactly what. It is still going to be used against you, but not in the same way. But I don't know what that means. Does anyone?
I'll defer to Vanessa.
So the ESSA Act still keeps a participation requirement in there.
Right.
That's where that participation requirement comes from, as well as from state law. But it leaves consequences to the states to figure out what happens if you don't meet the participation requirement. Whereas before there were prescribed consequences, you would fail AYP or you would be tagged in a certain way. But this actually aligns well with where we went with our waiver, which was more of a differentiated system of consequences to like a tiered intervention, so that not everybody got the same consequence, and recognizing the difference for a participation lack that might result from a data error or a large opt-out movement versus strategically hiding students with disabilities and not allowing them to be assessed, for example. So I think we're in good shape to already have in place a tiered system of consequences, which is kind of where ESSA goes.
Okay, thank you.
And I would just remind us all, that there's federal law which frames certain expectations which are changing now, but it's our interpretation and our formula for how we want to apply that law. It's our law. I mean, it's our requirements. So we do want some decent way to expect our young people to participate in the appropriate way with the appropriate caveats in testing, So I always get nervous when we say, this is the feds making us do this. No, we need to do a lot of these things in an effective way to help improve learning, I mean, it's us. That's our job.
I have no problem as long as it's a valid measure.
Right. So there's Sandra, did you have more items you wanted? So there is a good bill that is about counseling, training, and education. I think it passed the Senate, and it may take action soon in the House that does, in what we were calling for ourselves in the post-secondary report, enhanced training and education and professional development for counselors so they can do better college and career counseling. Is that something it's helpful for us to take a position on? Have we taken a position on supporting that?
We've been supportive in
Okay.
committee.
All right.
But if the board wants to make a statement.
I think from what I'm hearing, it might be helpful just to say, to reinforce, yes, we think it's a good bill, and we'd like to see it passed.
I don't recall the bill, so I would want to be able to at least know what it is I'm supporting.
Right. Maybe could William or someone get that bill number?
Yep,
and
I have been to
and let's move on, and we'll come back to that real quick. If folks are willing to trust on it, it's a good bill, and I think if we supported it, I hope we could support it publicly as a board. But Pam, you wanted to talk, so maybe we get that in bill number now, but
Sure.
about the EAA and some communications in Detroit, and had a little discussion about some
Right.
requests for clarification that you're getting.
Right, so I guess first is that there's this memorandum that came out from the College of Education Council at Eastern Michigan University, and there was a report that was done by Dr. Robert Carpenter, who's a professor at EMU, and looked at the 4 criteria that the Board of Regents for EMU set about a year ago, I think it was December 5th, to assess their agreement with the EAA. And so from this report that was completed, it looks like it shows that all of those criteria are failing. And I think most startling is looking at the academic portion and seeing not only how poorly EAA students are performing in comparison to U.S. and Michigan rates, but also that they've declined over the years, and this year looks like the lowest, maybe for all reports, and also breaking this out by race, and so it looks pretty dismal. So really, myself, I don't know if we would take a stance on this, but supporting what the staff is calling for is an immediate break with this agreement, the interlocal agreement that is between the EMU and the DPS.
Are they meeting today?
They are meeting today.
Yeah, so is there any outcome, or is it not, they've not met yet?
Doesn't it start this afternoon?
So, Eileen,
Sandra, have you found that?
go ahead, Eileen.
I'm sorry.
I want Michelle's question. I do know that it was mentioned that initially there was, it was an action item. The interlocal agreement topic on the agenda item was an action item, and it may have been moved over to a discussion item. So I'm not exactly sure what will come out of that.
Okay, thanks.
Eileen?
When I skimmed the report, I noticed that there are I don't know what the outcomes are for this board meeting for the EAA. And I know what our situation is. We have nothing to do with it. I also know that that's a faculty report, which they hopefully will consider. But the report mentioned, it doesn't do any comparison between the students in the EAA and the students in DPS or in the other Detroit schools, which is a significant omission from my perspective. So I don't know if there's more data out there that we haven't seen. Because of that, and because of the numerous areas where they couldn't get access to data, I honor their opinion based on the information they've seen. I've seen nothing except that. And I don't believe that we should be taking a vote on a position, because it's not our business, but I respect the fact that they've done that research. I just suspect there may be other numbers that need to be considered, and I also know that the board is not wanting, I would suspect that any board in that situation will be trying to find every statistic they can on which to base their decision. The default was a year, and we're at it, so.
And certainly can respond, but let me just say first, EMU may choose to opt out or to terminate this agreement. My sense and my understanding from some is, this whole discussion of the future of the Detroit schools, DPS, charter, and EAA, the governors had a proposal. The legislation that will be introduced at some point to implement some version of that is likely to be very different and is probably being negotiated, and my understanding is likely probably will include the ending of the EAA and the placing of those schools into DPS. My own personal position I've taken, I don't think in our Detroit statement we said end the EAA and put it back into DPS, but that's what I've said. That would be the most constructive thing, would be to treat it as other failing schools, because it's had such a complicated and checkered career that I think everybody would like to find a way to gracefully put an end to the experiment of the EAA and have a effective school turnaround functionality as a state and as in Detroit. So my own encouragement would be, I think we're going to see the EAA, and we could encourage the EAA to be integrated with the other failing schools. but I frankly don't, I think that's where everybody has probably headed to. Yeah.
I think the concern might be, yes, there will be an end to the EAA, but what replaces it? So,
Where does it
right,
go?
does it fold into the reform district, which potentially can expand? I mean, I think we all saw the media clips about questioning of whether or not the EAA wanted to start chartering more schools, and I don't know where that came from, but I think that if that's the direction, then that's very concerning, because you have an entity that was set up to transform schools now creating their own competitive schools. And I hope that's not the direction, but there's a part of me that really wonders if there's not something going on here, that they're all kind of interlinked, and then something's going to come out and you know, I don't like being taken by surprise, but I think that ends up happening a lot. And I think that's where a lot of the concern comes into play is, okay, maybe it's not going to be the EAA, but what else will it be? Yeah. And so, and if anyone has any insight into where those media reports came from, I'd love to hear it. Yeah.
Pam, you wanted to, I cut you off, Pam, and you wanted to say some response, and then Rick and Kathy.
Right, I did want to respond to Eileen, because, well, first of all, I want to say that it's unfortunate that the EAA is not a concern of this body. I don't know when that happened and how that happened, and
I would not characterize that as accurate either.
Okay.
That it is a concern of this body.
It is a concern of our body, but
we don't have
anything to say
jurisdiction
about
over it. That's my point. And
So-
it's its own
and I
separate
don't-
board. Pam, just let me say this. It has its own separate board, which is meeting today, and I think probably we'll hear either that there is some duplicitous activity on hand and they're planning to charter the entire universe, or it won't be that way and they're dissolving. But it is, at the moment, to be discussing it here as if there's something fishy going on when they're in a public meeting too is a little, I wouldn't say disrespectful, but a little oblique.
Well, I just don't want us to appear complicit, and I know last year there were many who thought that it would go away, and it didn't. And then the other issue is the comparison to other Detroit school districts. I think that the issue here is that last year, on December 5th, this board laid out criteria, and so they didn't meet their own criteria. So it wasn't a comparison to Detroit schools. They said that this agreement was contingent upon the fact that they would improve academic performance. That was one of the criteria that they failed in.
When you say this board, you're referring to EMU.
EMU board.
I'm sorry, Board of Regents, yes.
Rick and Kathy?
As Michelle mentioned earlier, she and I went to Detroit Western International High School, a Detroit public school, last Wednesday night to engage in a conversation at a staff meeting, and the staff there, number of staff members articulated their concern about this possibility that Eileen just referenced, and that is whether or not what will happen. What is the fate of Detroit public schools? What is the fate of public education in Detroit proper in general? There are some teachers expressed concerns that there was a possibility that the entire district would go the way of Muskegon Heights or Highland Park, and everything would become charterized, and that is of significant concern. I think from their perspective, from what I could glean, that they're just concerned about the lack of accountability, the lack of oversight, and frankly, the lack of services that could be provided to students. And so it's a very real concern that not every public school teacher across the state appreciates as acutely as those in Detroit.
I'm sorry, Rick, this was a DPS school
This
or
was
an EAA
This is a
school?
DPS school,
Okay.
Western International High School, and Michelle and I were there to just facilitate a conversation with staff about the future of public education in Detroit, and sort of just enable them to voice their concerns and listen to their thoughts. And my initial hope, which didn't quite take place was to help them articulate a way forward from an advocacy perspective, or think about the ways in which classroom educators could enable their voices to be heard, but also how they could advocate legislatively in responsible ways so they didn't feel so frustrated. And that's kind of still very much an open consideration, and I haven't figured out a way necessarily to help empower teachers who feel so angry and frustrated and disenfranchised, so that they can feel more empowered.
Oh, yep.
Kathy?
Yeah, well, you asked about you mentioned what else has happened. We've read, or I've gotten things from a couple of the Detroit reps that not only EAA, but EAA with DPS has put out some kind of a request for proposal to charterize all the Detroit schools, or some of the Detroit schools, including the EAA schools, and that was confirmed by a spokesperson for the DPS, that they have been, not necessarily that they're going to do it, but that they wanted to have this information in case they want to do something in the future to deal with high-priority schools.
And when that
That's
news
kind of
report
frightening.
was made, we were asking what's going on with this, and
Yeah.
was there any statement made by the governor's office or the Treasury or the turnaround office about this report? Do we know, Allison or Marty? Because I think at one point they were going to say something about it. I don't know if anything was ever said.
Nothing was ever
clarified.
said.
So I don't think we know what is going on here.
But that's really frightening.
Right.
If they want to, in effect, privatize Detroit public schools, because, as we know, 80% of the charters in this state are run by for-profit companies. So that's very distressing if that's the case. And I beg to differ with
Michelle.
Eileen. I think this is a concern of ours. We have not had much influence on what happened, but we are charged with supervising all public education in Detroit, in Michigan, including Detroit. And we have been cut out of the
And I
decision
agree. If
making.
it's about kids learning in public schools, it is our concern.
Right, and we're very concerned about it. And we can't tell each EMU what to do, but from my point of view, that interlocal agreement was completely beyond legal when it was created 2 or 3 years ago. And I think that's why they wanted to get it codified into law, because they knew it wasn't legal. But
Eileen and Michelle,
we never got rid of it. But I'm afraid they're going to get rid of it by making it the charter schools. That'll be worse even, if that's possible.
Well, I think we would oppose that. Eileen and Michelle, you wanted to make another comment on this topic?
Am I next?
Yeah, mhm.
Yes. I want to really clarify on this. I didn't say that we shouldn't have a position on the EAA. I said that this is a group of faculty which has made a report that seems to be missing a great deal of data. Whether the data changes the report, I don't know. But they're in the middle, the EAA is in the middle of a meeting in which that's been presented. And I said we have to respect another public body, and I still say that. My problem with all of this is that the solutions in Detroit are dependent and very, very difficult. They're fraught with peril for everybody because they're governance issues, they're education issues for children, which I don't hear a lot about, and there's significant funding issues. Detroit public schools probably will go bankrupt over the next 8 months. Some solution has to be found for those children. In other major cities, there are still private schools like Catholic schools downtown. Those don't exist in Detroit. There aren't enough charter authorizers to come in to try and take over all of the schools that we needed for all the children. But I understand also why everybody is trying to search for a solution, because currently, unless you find another source of revenue, it takes away $50 from every child in the state. And that's a horrible decision for anybody to have to make. This board has a responsibility to not get immersed in rumors, but to stand back and say, where are the facts? We don't have staff right now to tell us what the facts are, and we're descending into a discussion based on rumors, and I don't want to be part of that. It's demeaning to us, and I really feel strongly about that.
Michelle?
Well, I say this, I want to preface this by saying I have 3 children in Detroit Public Schools.
Absolutely.
Okay. And so I care first and foremost for the kids. And when I advocate for teachers and I advocate for governance, it's because I advocate for kids. They're all intertwined. If I can't have a school board that says, look at this curriculum is improper, or I demand to see this, or I think there should be more done for special ed students, if I don't have a responsive board that I can go to, my kids are not getting the advocacy that they deserve, and other kids aren't getting the advocacy that they deserve. They're all intertwined. And so I think that that's really important. I do want to have more facts as well on what's going on. I don't understand why this is, why it's rumor. I think there's a basis to it. I don't know where it's coming from, and it creates distrust. It just creates a lot of distrust, because obviously somebody knows about something and is being less than forthright. And maybe I'm not a political enough animal to understand how that works, but I would be really interested in speaking to and maybe having someone from the Reform Office or Treasurer's Office come before this board and talk to us. I mean, they've gone before the legislature about what's happening with deficit districts and priority schools. I think, they should also, if we're working together, should also give us some of those facts that we need to make, hopefully make an informed decision. I do think we have enough evidence to know that the EAA really is not working. I don't think we need any more evidence on that. And I don't think it's a problem to say that, it really should be folded into Detroit Public Schools, back into the Detroit Public Schools. I do think we should have a plan of what to do with those besides just folding them back. That's going to really help the kids in those schools. And I don't think we're given the emergency manager and the state of things right now. I would like to see some sort of a collaborative process to figure out what to do for those schools, besides just moving them from one place to another. So one last point I wanted to make is, Rick, you asked about how could these teachers be empowered. To me, it's a no-brainer. It's being active in a union. It's being able to have tenure. It's being able to have a voice. It's being able to speak out as teachers to advocate for what they know is best for kids. And the only vehicle that I know that they can do that is with their labor organization. They are politically active. They've been politically effective. That is why they are a political target. But when I was there, and I told them, to have a voice, you should be active, working together with your union, and making sure that you have a collective voice in Lansing, because I don't see any other way that they can individually, or even in professional organizations, have because professional organizations are limited in what they can do as well. So that's my 2 cents on all of this.
Well, given, we made a statement as a board on our recommendations for what a comprehensive approach to Detroit schools improvement and management would look like. And that said, we want and support some sort of quality management regime for all public schools, charter, EAA, DPS. We said clearly we want that management regime, whether a new commission or a DPS board, to be people elected by the people of Detroiters, so they control any new governance models. And we said we want to pay the bill. I think we did not speak directly to the future of the EAA, but I would support a statement or extension of that said, as part of such a comprehensive quality improvement for all public schools in Detroit, we believe that the EAA should be ended, given its lack of performance, given complications, more than complications in its management and execution / corruption, that it should be terminated. And those failing schools, the ones that are still failing, should be treated as all of our public failing schools with priority attention for turnaround, but treated as all public schools that are failing, which we do have a state game plan for what we do about all failing schools, not be treated differently through a different vehicle. I mean, that would be what I would support saying. But we don't know enough about this secret plan to charterize to say anything about that, except if that were true, it certainly is not a comprehensive solution to quality improvement of all schools, failing and non, under governance, to Pam's point, of people that are responsible to Detroit, And so we just don't know where that's coming from. But I think, our position, as I just re-articulate, I think is clear. If you want to add the note as part of a comprehensive solution or plan for all Detroit's public schools being, delivering quality education, we believe the EAA should be terminated.
Immediately.
Well, it's got to be, but back to the Eileen's point, if it's terminated immediately, it's not part of a comprehensive solution. We want the comprehensive plan so that governance, quality management, it would be easy to, if we ended it immediately, it would be, not the total solution that we want to encourage, certainly. It's just ending something that's not working, but whether the kids in those schools, what happens to them so they get a great education? There's got to be a comprehensive approach that includes attention to answer that question. What happens to those schools as part of a comprehensive solution to improving learning for all kids, DPS, charter schools, and EAA school children?
Well, wouldn't EAA become part of the, if it either becomes part of DPS or as part of the reform office? And the reform office does follow, there's a protocol for turning around schools.
Right, that's what I'm saying. It should be, if there's schools in the EAA that are still meet the criteria for failing schools, they should be put alongside all the other failing schools that office
That's what the plan
we as a state have to turn around or improve. Do we want to say anything, or do we want to just let this, I think, clear position stand on? We could add that note about as part of a comprehensive reform to improve learning outcomes for all school children. We believe the EAA would best be terminated for reasons that are.
I'm not opposed to saying that, but what we did before when we came up with that statement, we did that in the interim until there was legislation that was introduced regarding Detroit, and we still haven't seen that legislation.
Sure, and I won't say anything more than I fully expect that legislation, once introduced, will terminate the EAA. And we can clap then, or we can say, we want that legislation to be introduced, terminating when it's introduced as part of a comprehensive fix. And the EAA.
The terms of the termination.
Right, yeah. Sometimes you have to be careful what you wish for, because.
Yes, Lupe, you always are.
Well, what I would like to see, I wouldn't support in addition to what we have already stated. I wouldn't support that. But I can support requesting that somebody come and give us more information at a future meeting, so we have the root of maybe in the truth of what's going on, instead of speculating and listening to this and that. I don't support going by I heard this and maybe this, and I don't support that either, making a statement over that kind of scenario, but I would support requesting somebody to come and speak to us and give us more concrete information.
And I guess, A, let's certainly request that. B, I do think legislation, if it's introduced yet this fall, will, again, likely, I think, end the EAA, but also, who knows exactly what it will be, because it hasn't been introduced. So I think we'll have plenty of opportunity there may be some new surprises in there. I do think, Pam, that it is important that we encourage a comprehensive approach that says all public school students in Detroit and the state, we want a plan that is going to lift their learning, and we're not rifling, we don't want to treat it in isolation, and that's why I would certainly encourage, let's wait to see what the legislation says. We can reinforce changes we would like, including if, the EAA is still in there somehow. Because I think everybody has a real interest in easing the EA out of its misery, as I put publicly one time. Richard?
I appreciate your insisting that we see EA as part of a larger picture, and I think it's certainly appropriate for us to gather information as we, with the rest of the public and the legislature, explores what are the best options for Detroit schools. So I appreciate. I just want to speak in support of what you shared.
Pam, are you wanted to say something
Take a
else?
position as sort of a preemptive strike that we would oppose any attempts to charterize Detroit Public School District?
I'm certainly,
I don't know if
I really don't think, I think we may be foolishly, again, agreeing with Eileen, I think we may be foolishly responding to somebody's potentially unilateral, preemptive balloon floating or great idea that, a Richard McClellan type thought, let's get this on the table because maybe we can make it real,
Well, we could say we're responding to a...
Oh, no, we should not be responding to news reports.
We're talking
On
about...
the other hand, we want to make sure it doesn't happen, so... I want to make sure it doesn't happen. I can't speak for all of you.
Well, I think, Kathy, I believe our position on a Detroit solution is that kind of comprehensive prophylactic, because it basically says we want people elected by people of Detroit to make a plan for all the public school students, and we trust them to do it. And we're not going to, and I imagine they're not going to charterize their own system, the mayor or a elected DPS board. So, but then that's their call. It truly is. If we want to live by our rhetoric of we want political accountability to Detroiters and we want to trust Detroiters' judgment about how they want to reorganize their school system to improve learning. If they choose to charterize it all, who are we to say, you can't do that because we philosophically oppose that?
Well, and I think that's the key, is there an elected board making that decision
Right.
who's accountable to the people? Right now, there really isn't, and so I think that's, again, there's a concern here, and I keep hearing, we can't respond to rumors and stuff, but Lupe, just for your knowledge, how I found out about the EAA was I received a call Friday night saying the governor's having a press conference on Monday morning. If you want to come. And I had no idea what it was about. No one I talked to had any idea. I showed up Monday morning and I found out, hey, there's this new thing called the Education Achievement Authority and we've created it. Isn't this great? I think that's why we operate the way we do with what could be the next step, because there was no discussion before then. There was no, hey, by the way, we're thinking this way, or none of that happened. It was just kind of like sprung, and I think that's why we operate in the way that we do, because the history says you might not know until literally the second it's created.
No, but things have changed. At that time, our superintendent was actively in the middle of working that out.
Right.
Now we have a superintendent who's not doing that kind of thing, who actually works and talks and works with us on what do we think that's most important to do, and works well with the governor, and works well with legislators in a very straightforward way. So we're in a different place.
Yes, but as Pavlov showed us, it only takes once, and
Yeah, but I think that we should not let that...
And I'm talking about the dog, not the legislator.
And I just want to remind, we're talking about two different things. One thing, we're talking about, something that is in the news and sounds very credible, and we do hear the legislators that are local there, as well as the elected board, who are not aware of this. So those are the people who were elected to make those decisions. But then we're also talking about this EAA, which that is not hearsay, and that the data that we're seeing definitely shows that it has failed. It's a failure. So these are two different things that we're talking about. Both of them, I think both have credibility to them. But, the one as far as the EAA needing to dissolve, and obviously we don't want that to end up into this potential of charters. But, I think your original statement kind of like helped us to maneuver both of those concerns.
Good. So does anyone really want to make an additional statement? Or, the only statement I would support is in addition to our statement about a comprehensive solution that achieves certain goals, we believe and recommend the EAA should be ended as part of that with attention to the learning needs and outcomes of those kids.
The students in those
Yeah,
schools.
the students in those schools.
I would love to have some way to have the community actually have a voice in what that process would be, but.
Well, that's what we're recommending with our solution to Detroit, is it's got to be governance and decision-making that is the peoples of Detroit. So that's the solution we're encouraging. And I'm very confident that's what legislation ultimately will also be proposed. So I don't think we need to say anything more.
No.
This discussion says more too.
I agree with you, but I don't think some of my colleagues agree with that statement because they keep bringing all these different things up. Now, if we follow Robert rules, then make a motion, the people that are disenchanted, make a motion, put it on the table, and let's vote on it. That's what the process is.
Does anyone want to make a motion?
So make a motion if you're not happy, and we'll vote on it, and
And you can be not happy or totally happy, because it's, there's always compromise, and you don't have to make motions.
yeah,
You can-
because we really already have a statement that I think touches in all of your concerns. But if somebody feels very strongly, the process, the Robert rules say, make a motion, somebody seconds, and then we vote on it.
Okay, our parliamentarian has spoken, since we don't have an
Maybe I should
attorney.
make
Do we have any attorneys anymore? We lost our Dan Barner.
I'm an attorney.
Any motions to be made? I think this is actually if any motions to
I'm
be
the attorney
made?
today.
All right,
No, but we
I
could
appreciate
make a
that.
motion that we-
This discussion is very important and helpful, and Pam, I have as you know, very strongly am happy for us to have these kinds of discussions. In public view, this is what we are about, and it only redounds favorably on not only the kind of way we proceed, but on our goal, which is to help the kids learn and help the people of Detroit to own and operate the solution to that. So I appreciate very much your attention to this important topic, as I do other board members on many
Everybody has
topics.
good
Okay,
points.
then
Right.
I'll make a motion as far as, what the heck.
She's going to follow Robert rules, okay?
Yeah, to supplement our position regarding the Detroit EAA, that we recommend that we reiterate our support for dissolving the EAA, encourage it to be folded back into the Detroit Public Schools. Did we say that on the previous one?
No. So I would encourage, if we want to say anything,
Yeah, and prefer or would oppose any charterization of the entire EAA.
I support.
Is there a second? Second. Is it what you?
That was.
so can I
Your second.
paraphrase the motion would be as we add to our statement about a comprehensive improvement plan for Detroit public education, that we encourage dissolution of the EAA, and can we say also discourage the governance, discourage the charterization of the Detroit public schools? Can that be something we say?
Yeah.
Is that something we can garner support for? Yes.
It's not entirely clear to me. Kathleen, I heard say we want to avoid the charterization of the EAA, and which currently is separate from Detroit Public Schools. I understand that the motion is to recommend that EAA be returned to Detroit Public Schools, and rather than being chartered. I mean, I think that's the burden of the motion, right?
Well, I think Kathleen and others are concerned that there is some secret plan with Traction to charterize all of the schools in Detroit in some way,
Really not to charterize the
but I would also, again,
public school district.
this is why I think it's a little challenging for us to make a thoughtful motion. The EAA schools, I believe, now include some schools that are performing and some schools that are still failing. Where do they go?
Does the ones that are performing go to DPS and the ones that are failing go into our school turnaround district? Probably yes, but this is why I think it's challenging for us to make a thoughtful motion on this topic. Besides, we think the EA should be dissolved and there should be a plan for their learning of the kids' improvement as part of the comprehensive fix for Detroit public education. Eileen?
If we were doing this with a comprehensive report that had data for adjoining schools for all of the EAA schools, so we could get some sense of whether there's been school improvement for all children outside of the EAA. If we'd had a presentation that showed us, besides the things that you've read and that I've read, some of which I believe and some of which I don't, because I don't have the data in front of me, I just don't have any information to make a decision, then I would say we should be making this policy statement. But to do things on rumors is going to drive us crazy until the Detroit solution is resolved, and we're going to be wrong. And this is a public body. We're statewide elected. I can't do this. It makes no sense to me. It's a political, I'll tell you what it'll be seen as. It won't be seen as governance or as soundly based on educational statistics. It will only be seen as political, and I want this board to do better than this.
Pam, and then I thought we were about to not have a motion and wait for legislation, and because our position's clear on comprehensive.
Well, let's vote on it, John.
Yep.
That's the process.
So,
let's vote on it.
I just want to say there was two different
Right.
conversations, but the conversation in regard to the data about the EAA, that's us seeing it in this report that I just brought up, that's not the first that we've seen. The EAA data in comparison to the Detroit School District and the state of Michigan. I've just recently seen some data. I don't know if others have, but this report was just in comparison to, or just about what this specific Board of Regents said that they were going to do, and to show a trend as far as year-to-year trend. And so there was no improvement, and in fact, it was going downward. So I just want to just make sure we're clarifying the rumor versus the empirical data that we do have at our fingertips, or have had.
All right, well, let's try to finish up here. So Kathy has made a motion, and it's essentially saying, Kathleen, if you'll indulge me, we want to amend and add to our statement about the nature of a comprehensive improvement plan and for Detroit public education, that we would encourage as part of that the EA be dissolved, and that appropriate attention to the learning needs of those students be part of that comprehensive plan. And further, we discourage the charterization of public education as part of a comprehensive Detroit plan.
Yeah.
I prefer to leave off that last because I think it's up to the people who will govern themselves. But if that's your motion, I think we should then have a vote on it.
Yeah,
Is that your motion, Kathy?
I just want to say it's not completely rumor. There's a report in the Free Press yesterday. It quotes Michelle Zrodowski, who's their spokesperson for the DPS, who said in an email to the Free Press, the district has not made a decision about chartering additional schools. She said DPS and the EAA decided to jointly seek proposals so they would have a list of qualified charters as well as turnaround restructuring providers available, just to have the qualified restructure and turnaround providers available as we just consider what to do.
Okay, very good.
It's not a complete rumor. Right. This is...
Kathy, was my rearticulation of your motion acceptable to you?
Yeah, that's
okay.
fine.
Then let me call the question. The motion's been made and seconded, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
So I believe it's 5-3. The motion passes. Good. Now we can get to the controversial stuff like counselor training. Whew! Man, we're going to be...
Didn't we do counselor training before?
Yeah, so I think, if I'm not mistaken, Marty, thank you, this legislation has been the kind of legislation supported by the coalition of counselor improvement, MCAN, and others, It does call, and it's passed one of the houses, it does call for additional training for counselors as part of their preparation in professional development, just to improve their ability to do college and career counseling. It was opposed by some of the counselors' lobbies and some institutions before, when it was requiring a specific course be inserted in their preparation regime. That is now not what this legislation is. It is additional professional development and training for counselors, which is consistent with, I believe, what our department and our top 10 agenda, and certainly the recommendations coming out of that post-secondary attainment work group are consistent with this. So since it may take action, and Cassandra, are you comfortable with us as legislatively taking a vote to support this?
If that's the will of the board.
Well, I'm also asking, is it your will?
I'm still reading.
Can I make a clarification?
Yeah.
This was reported out of the Workforce and Talent Development Committee, and it's on the House floor, in the
Okay.
first House. So it hasn't passed the House yet. It's a House bill, still in the House. It's on the floor. It was reported last Thursday out of committee. So it's just onto the floor.
Has there been any organized opposition, and if so, why?
Not on this version.
Okay.
No.
Was there a Senate bill version, though, that also?
I think last session there was
Okay.
another version.
So there's nothing about increasing the number of counselors, it's just making them.
Correct.
Not in this, but there's separate efforts to try to get funding, which is necessary to do that, you know.
But why isn't it in here?
Because this is a piece to try to enhance the education, training, and skills of, as we prepare counselors and as they work as counselors, so they can do more of the college career guidance, like what the Armada folks talked about, where they're doing all those things to try to support their kids getting to post-secondary. You missed a great presentation from your neighbors in Armada. Armada, sorry. I said Cassandra's got to hear this. She's from Yale. They've moved from 40% in their rural community, where most kids and their families, didn't ever go to college, to 90% going to college. It's pretty incredible.
And so this,
I'm sorry.
no, I didn't have.
Question. Is it feasible, it calls on the department will develop the standards by December 1st, and then the department will not renew a counselor's license beginning January 1st, 2018, so that gives you a year and a month to do 50 hours of training. Is that feasible for a counselor to do?
That's a good question. I don't know. Do you have any idea, Vanessa? We might have to get OPBS up here, professional services. I can't say. I can't say. I mean, this is 2015, so right now, at the end of 2015. And so we're talking 2 years to get that through.
But they don't have the standards until December 1st, 2016.
Right.
So they can't actually do the training till after
It
that.
it gives us a year to go through the standards
Right,
process.
right. So I guess that's my only question.
And if people aren't comfortable, that's fine. I think this is good stuff. I believe it's the good stuff, and I just want us to reinforce it. But if we have any questions about it, we can come back for it.
And I guess my question was along the line of Michelle and Cassandra's questions. Could it increase that ratio of counselor to student, the counselor to student ratio? I think.
It doesn't do anything.
So there's
Improve the ratio.
it's not essential we take action. It's just reinforcing one element of a good thing for better counseling. There's 3 different ways that that ratio issue is trying to be attended to. One, as we speak, and there is some new money to help support additional college career advisors that are being placed, particularly in high-need high schools where a lot of minority, non-traditional going students are, to supplement what counselors do to provide just the college career guidance. And this is both philanthropic dollars, and then there's some state enhancement to match that's being managed through MCAN. There also is at least a proposed and recommendation at higher ed thing. Let's do what Colorado did, which is have dedicated some state funding to add counselors, real counselors, not just add-on career advisors, so we get that ratio down, and whether that legislation and that budget, move will be made, it's not in here, but that's the kind of thing we're trying to encourage in the higher ed attainment, work. This would be helpful. Let's get $10 million to lower that ratio in the high schools in particular, where it's needed. So, other questions about this? It's not essential. I just thought, it's worth saying something about. But I think we're saying good things about it anyway,
Yeah.
so, okay.
You could say good things about it and then just qualify it as
Right.
the concern with the 1 year and that we need to improve the ratio in addition.
All right.
I,
What else have we got on the legislative potpourri?
Excuse me,
Yeah.
did we make a motion on
No,
this?
I'm not saying, that I don't want people to vote for something that they don't have all their questions answered, so.
Or we didn't, and all the others?
I want to broach the subject of taking a position on 279 and 280. And where that would, although it's not directly on curriculum and things like that, it's on preventing a union representative from representing teachers on the clock, and it would stop that from happening. I think it would have an impact on the collaboration and resolving of issues in the school, and I would like to put out that I would support taking a position in opposition of those bills, but we'll just throw it out there to the rest of you to see what you think. 279 and 280, yeah.
And did you discuss and take a position in legislative committee at all?
We had discussed in legislative committee, and we didn't take a position because we wanted to find out if these bills were potentially moving anytime soon. And I think what we learned is that they're not. Correct? Yeah. So, so we didn't take a formal position because we didn't have that information yet, and now we do have that information. So it's it's the will of the board if you wanted to weigh in on it.
I'm happy to support, if there's a motion. I mean, I think, to me, these types of bills have nothing to do with education, and unfortunately, they only have something to do with some sort of anti-union agenda, which has zero to do with education, so or should not be supported. And also to send a message, too, that there's some who want to send messages that we want to get our hardworking educators and people, not work with them, which is not the message we should send in Michigan. We should be working together, not wasting time on divisive anti-worker legislation in whatever camp.
Okay, so, do you see any downside of taking a position in opposition to these bills? Or do you think it would be? Okay, so I propose then that we voice or make a statement that, given that these bills would be more of a deterrent than promoting education, that the board would encourage the legislature to oppose or to not support these bills. I think they would just create more consternation or distrust, and it could, I mean, I honestly think having someone to resolve problems on the clock, or to be, not to have to, because what'll happen is they're gonna have to do it after hours and on weekends. They'll have to negotiate, and the administrators will have to come in then too, and they don't want to do that either, because they're compelled by law to negotiate, but you can't compel a teacher to punch out and do it off the clock, so they're going to do it after hours. So, so I would I
Michelle,
would,
could we say something even simpler that doesn't get into, any rationale for this?
yes, save me.
But just says, we discourage the legislature from moving or acting on these pieces of legislation which have, in our view, nothing to do with improving education.
Stop it at the end
Period.
of.
Right, thank you.
Just don't, we encourage them not to move forward.
Exactly.
End of story.
Okay,
Does that work for you?
it works great.
All right, so I move that.
I support.
Any further discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye. Nay.
2 nays? Okay, the motion carries, so,
She said aye.
thanks.
Yeah.
She said aye in a very
I should
nay-like
say aye on the
way.
nays.
There was no N on that nay.
No,
All right, very good. Any other in the legislative potpourri? All right,
A number of other bills floating around, but I'll bring them up to the legislative committee.
let's let them float for a while. Thank you, Marty. I know we put you to sleep for a while there, but time to wake up and, anyway, thank
Praying,
you.
actually.
Okay, board members, comments by board members, and we're ending on soon. Time for folks, a couple of you, Eileen and Michelle, I know are going to the Lieutenant Governor's meeting. You might, again, tell us a bit about what's up with that and when we should hear something. But other comments?
Did you want to speak to that, Eileen?
Well, I think we already have been talking about it. There are, how many points, Michelle? 4 or 5 that they're working on concurrently, different stages of addressing each one and trying to come up with a comprehensive package. You heard that it might extend into January.
Yes.
A lot of work, a lot of good input, and a lot of really interesting discussions on both the macro and the micro level. That's the part that has been the most reassuring about this. The amount of work that the department would be doing to follow up is significant because it's a sea change in responding to children as the center of special education. It's very hard to provide special ed services without becoming detached and bureaucratized. It's the nature of any large institution. Any bureaucracy tends to become remote from the people that it serves. But I think it's particularly hard in special ed because so many cases are very compelling and there's a lot of raw emotions in it. I think it's easy to become numb. So, but part of the problem of trying to separate from children that you're trying to help is that in the end you have to be able to be touched by what's going on without losing your inner core. So now what we're trying to do is to find the happy ground that helps many more children than we're currently helping, and it will take a significant amount of reorganization within the department, but I see a lot of willingness to go there, and little girls and little boys who could, like Lily today, are the reason to do it, so.
And I also wanted to commend Terry, I don't know if she's not here.
Yeah.
Terry.
There's Terry.
Who has been just a
Stellar.
really essential and stellar part of the committee, and her understanding, her explanations, the work, she's done a tremendous amount of work, and I'm really proud to be associated with you.
Nice to you. Lupe?
Okay, I would like to report on a summit that I went to with the National Association of Latino Elected Officials, which the acronym is NALEO. So you hear me talk about NALEO often. And this was on November the 20th and 21st in San Antonio, so that was a very key. But the name of the Policy Institute was on the role of STEM and career technical education in addressing America's skilled worker shortage. So this was very, very well planned. This NALEO is the national group, so they're everything is extremely very informative. So I was very lucky to have been selected as a participant. And they had the experts on STEM, but this is what I wanted to tell you, that one of the speakers was advocating for the science standards, for states to adopt the science standards. And so he was from the national scene in Washington, D.C. I don't have my papers with me, so I don't have his name. But anyway, so when he completed his presentation, many states got up and said, well, we cannot even speak to our members, to our state board members, because they don't want to hear anything about science standards. And others, well, you know, that's not a thing we talk about in our state, and, oh, yes. So anyway,
We love standards.
but then I got up and I said, we had just adopted the standards 2 weeks before, and I got up and said that we had adopted the standards in the state of Michigan. And so the speaker went, he was real happy that that we had adopted the standards and that we were one of a very few states in the country that were moving ahead. So I think we're doing, you know, as you go to different workshops, institutes, conferences, I feel assured that what we're doing at this table, for the most part, is the right thing to do for our students. So I'm happy to report that.
And wouldn't it be fantastic when we produce more and the most Latino scientists and engineers from all these
Exactly.
wonderful
Esther
diverse
is gonna
students
be
we
an
have.
engineer.
There we go. Pam.
My question was to Eileen and oh my, Michelle, I'm sorry, it's the end of the day. You, no.
No, that's Richard.
You. As it relates to the Lieutenant Governor's newly formed body, are we looking at environmental exposures at all? I know I mentioned that when he was here. And what made me think about this, and not only, you know, like childhood lead poisoning that can lead to developmental delays and learning disabilities, but also I saw a mom, and I met her with her child who was autistic many years ago, and I remember him having pica tendencies, which led to his lead poisoning. So even from that aspect.
No, it hasn't, it has been discussed in a small amount, because it's more like, what do you do once they have that disability? But I think it's a great topic. I think we should have, as a board, have somebody come and speak.
Right.
You know, given Flint and all of that. I know, you know, my son with autism was diagnosed with heavy metal poisoning, which some people think is the cause of his autistic-like behavior, and including high levels of lead. And but no, and I don't think we've talked about it.
No,
preventing.
the discussions are on how to construct policy for the widest possible reach, and some of these things are public health issues. You know, the response to them to children with disabilities in the schools is the best services possible. The medical response is in public health. You know, this is really a question for Terry, and probably not yet.
Okay.
So.
I would like to see the board take up the issue, you know, take it up here, because I know U of M, that you're affiliated with, did that study that shows the levels of lead in the blood corresponds really closely to negative scores on the MEP. So it's, you know, so if you're in a community with high lead levels, and then they showed where the lead levels were, for instance, in Detroit, in certain old industrial areas, and then the MEP scores are low. I mean, we look at focusing on the teacher, and I understand that, but there are so many other possibilities that contribute to low test scores. So I think it's important to look at.
Eileen.
I had the privilege last week of attending the Education Commission of the State's meeting, be it ever so brief, in Austin. And because the meetings are very brief, unlike MAC, as you know. But one of the things that was really intriguing was a futuring exercise that I'll provide a link on. And the challenge, the question that was raised is that with the amount of exponential change we've had already with iPads, iPhones, and technology in general, everybody has their anecdotal story about kids spurning toys. It turns out that the 8 to 10-year-old kids are no longer as entranced with an iPhone-controlled robot. 3 years ago, you couldn't have kept it out of a kid's hands, but they're pretty jaded now. So, and that's obviously, I don't know, I don't care. Hopefully they're going back to walking on tight ropes, because that's probably better for their minds. But I think that we're facing a sea change again in children entering school. My son's school announced that a quarter of the freshmen were flunking all their classes just before exams. I'm sure it was in part to get them to study. But the point is that there are disconnects going on with the way kids are learning and walking around outside of school, and the way that they're then challenged by teachers and by curriculum. So the futuring exercise was fascinating, because it said, if you think it's been fast so far, watch what happens over the next 10 to 15 years. And how do you find the path for intriguing children on the solid curriculum that they have to learn to function, even if it doesn't have bells and whistles? And how do you make it so solid, rock solid for them, that bells and whistles can be added on of any sort or taken away as they go through life, and it will make sense? So I'll send a link to the study. I'm not, as one of as the moderator said to one of the presenters, I would like to go inside your brain for about 2 hours and root around, because she was seeing things and talking about things that all of us feel and touch. Ideas like the fact that if people are not fully employed, how do they find meaning in life? How does that impact K-12? What do we find? How does that drive more significant arts instruction, for example, to have meaningful lives? So. What I'd like to do, that's a pretty far out endeavor, but ECS presents a number of studies every month, and I'd like to have, like NASB does, just a few minutes on a monthly basis at some point during the agenda to talk about anything pertinent and to guide people to studies that might be relevant to the work we're doing.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you. Other board member comments or information of interest? If not, this is our last meeting of the year. So everybody spend some time with your family and enjoy the holidays and think about Brian and his family, and we will reconvene in January 12th, right? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Meeting adjourned.
Thank you. Feliz Navidad, right?